racing to get a pizza on TV, biking in the 606, and crust as thin as Bible paper. This week, we're in Chicago's Bucktown neighborhood.
Traveling the world to bring you delicious dishes, tasty beverages, and interesting experiences. This is the Destination Eat Drink Podcast on the Radio Misfits Podcast Network.
I'm Brent Peterson. Welcome to Destination Eat Drink, the travel podcast for foodies. You found the spot where food and travel meet on the Destination Eat Drink website, on the Destination Eat Drink YouTube channel, and here on the Destination Eat Drink podcast. And this week, we're talking pizza and much more with Jonathan Porter from Chicago Pizza Tours. But first, if you like this show, please rate and review us on your podcast app. And if you're so inclined, you can support the podcast with a contribution at buymeacoffee.com/Destination Eat Drink, just like Marco, Basement Brandon, and Raw Travel TV did. And thank you very, very much. Jonathan Porter is the founder of Chicago Pizza Tours, a foodie tour company that takes visitors on different treks to sample the wide variety of pizza in Chicago. John was on the show 4 years ago, and I've got links to his first appearance in the description. This time, we take a dive into a Chicago neighborhood that you're probably not familiar with, but has a great food scene, Bucktown. We talk about deep dish pizza, of course, but also the most popular pizza among locals in Chicago, the best spot for late night eats, and why Jon Stewart caused his phone to blow up. Plus, we discuss how realistic the TV show The Bear is, and I'm starving, so let's eat.
Destination Eat Drink.
Jonathan Porter from Chicago Pizza Tours. Welcome back to Destination Eat Drink. Can't believe, I looked it up, I can't believe it's been over 4 years since you were on the show last.
Lots happened since then.
I'll say the whole world has changed. And
Yep.
And pizza's changed a little bit too. But I wanted to start because I noticed this just the other day. Jon Stewart is back on The Daily Show once a week. And because of that, I think his rant about Chicago-style pizza has kind of gone viral again and is back in the zeitgeist of discussion now in pop culture. So I just wanted to throw that out to you to start, John. What do you think about that? And what was your reaction when you saw that Jon Stewart bit the first time?
Well, that was one of those, you wake up in the morning and you look at your phone and you're like, why do I have 75 text messages and all these notifications and all my social media? And then because I did not see it live, and I definitely kind of catching up on it as everybody else had already viscerally reacted to it. So, I'm gonna kind of go a little bit of a different route with this one than you might expect. I'm actually going to give Jon Stewart some props as far as his pizza acumen. He is a huge pizza fan, and in fact, a good friend of mine who runs pizza tours in New York, Scott Wiener, who runs Scott's Pizza Tours, has run into him several times while on tours at places like John's of Bleecker and Joe's down there as well, and has had some pretty good conversations with him, obviously off the record, just somebody who really does value their pizza. Now, that being said, for those that might not know the bit, he was holding a glass of champagne inside of sort of toasting, and then it was mentioned that Chicago deep dish pizza is better than New York, and he just breaks the glass and the champagne goes everywhere, and then he goes off onto this very stereotypical Italian rant, which is hilarious because he's extremely talented, and it was great. The biggest thing that I had, and my takeaway with that too, was that the really hardcore Chicago pizza people were like, that wasn't even deep dish. The picture up there that he had was a stuffed pizza. And it was probably most likely a stuffed pizza from the big name in stuffed pizza here in Chicago, which, many view as sort of the, not really a good quality one. It's just a mess of tomato sauce on top and way too much cheese. And, melted cheese tastes really good, but like, one slice and it's like a tennis shoe in the dryer kicking around. No digesting that,
Oh my
So,
God.
and I love the fact that, local chain here, Lou Malnati's, which is, synonymous with deep dish pizza. Shortly after they saw that rant, Mark and his son packed up their bags, flew to New York, brought a bunch of ingredients, and basically waited outside the show and bullied their way on. And he made him a true Chicago deep dish pizza, and they sort of buried the hatchet. And he said, this one's pretty good, actually. I apologize and all that. So, it was great because, it's all in good fun at the end of the day. And it really brought a lot of attention to, the pizza in general and that whole Chicago, New York debate and all that good stuff. So no news is bad news when it comes to pizza, and people have these very heartfelt reactions to it. So, brought it to the forefront again.
I'm a huge Jon Stewart fan, and everything you said, agree with 100%. The thing that always strikes me as someone who moved away from Chicago when I was fairly young, I moved to the East Coast. I was constantly defending Chicago-style pizza. And the thing that I always brought up was that deep dish pizza isn't the real Chicago-style pizza in the fact that most Chicagoans eat is tavern-style pizza. This was the pizza that I grew up on. This was the pizza that my family would eat when we would go out on Friday nights. And Jon Stewart had no mention of that, and 99% of the population outside of Chicago has no idea about tavern-style pizza. And this is why I fly the flag of tavern-style pizza, and I'm happy that you also fly the flag of tavern-style pizza, which is for people who don't know, which is a thin crust pizza cut with a cross cut rather than, the triangular pie-shaped cut.
I'm doing my best here. 14 years of tours, and when people book, they obviously have their mind set on that they're coming to Chicago. They're going to try deep dish, but within the first minute of the tour, we really do explain to them is that while Chicago is known as the deep dish capital of the world, and that's true, it's where it was invented. We do it the best. For the most part, the locals really only eat it on special occasion or when people from out of town are visiting us.
Exactly.
The overwhelming majority is that pizza that you just described. And to be honest, the pandemic sort of, it's in a renaissance of tavern style pizza. When we were first running our tours, one of the things, and I know we talked about this last time, was, Flo and Santos opened up in 2010 doing tavern style pizza and other Polish foods. To me, that was really one of the newer of the tavern style pizzas. All those tavern style places that we know about, that we grew up with, they've been around 40, 50, 60 more years, right? So Flo and Santos was really one of the first to open doing that style of pizza in the 21st century. And since the pandemic, there's been a handful of others that are now gravitating towards that and taking it up a level as far as like the thinness and the crispiness of it. And they're doing some great work. Do you want me to just mention a few just so your listeners can?
Yeah, definitely. And so that I can write them down for my next trip to Chicago too.
That sounds good. So some of the newer ones and these are strictly after the pandemic started. So the first one I'm going to talk about is a place called Kim's Uncle Pizza in Westmont, Illinois. So a suburb about 15, 20 miles west of Chicago. It's three people, a husband and wife and their business partner, and they're younger, like I'm going to say early to mid 30s or something maybe. And they started out with something that was called Eat Free Pizza during the pandemic, where they were just making pizza in their apartment, and you would almost like jump in like a lottery or something like that. And if you were picked, you could drive up to the alley, pick up a free pizza. That was it. So it started out as like a social media thing. And that sort of, spiraled into what was then became, I don't want to get this wrong. It's pizza fried chicken ice cream was the name of the business. And
so it's not one thing. It's not one thing all mixed together. It's these are their specialties. I got you. Okay, good.
So some people believe in a name should tell you exactly what they do, and that hit the mark on that one for sure. But if you remember Kimski, which is down at or was down at 31st and Morgan in Bridgeport, um, they weren't operating during the pandemic. They were taking a break, and these guys struck up a partnership with Ed Mazursky from Mars Brewing and of Kimski, and they were able to kind of run their pizza joint out of that space for a while. And that went on for I think a couple of years, and they did other styles too, in addition to the tavern style. But tavern style was really the one that shined for everybody. And then when that kind of that program, that contract, when it was all up, they found a space out in Westmont with an old Folds oven that is that carousel style, almost like a Ferris wheel on the inside. And they're taking these thin crust doughs. They're typically crispier on the outside, and as you work your way towards the middle, they tend to be a little bit softer and foldable. But what they're doing, and a lot of other places are now doing, is Pat's on Lincoln for years has been taking their dough and rolling it out with a sheeter and hitting it with a docker, which pokes holes in that dough, and then laying it on parchment paper in the refrigerator for like 3, 4, maybe even 5 days. And they call it the curing process, essentially letting it get pretty stale. So a lot of these newer ones are taking that curing process to the next level, and it is unbelievably thin and unbelievably crispy. Tim's uncle in Westmont, good luck getting there. It's and not just getting it, but like getting an order in there. One oven, limited seating, I think 10 total. You call Tuesday at 4:00 on the dot, and you hope that they can give you a time and to pick it up and everything. So they're doing some great work. They got a lot of buzz going about them. Another one I would talk about too would be the new one that's getting a lot of buzz is it's called Pizza Mata. And Michelin star type restaurant was Giant in Logan Square, and these are the chefs from Pizza Mata that decided to go ahead and make their take on a tavern style pizza. And again, it's that curing process that makes it so paper thin and crispy. Middlebrow Bungalow is another one that's been doing that too. They're a brewery that makes different breads. They've got this nice electric oven, and again, the super thin, curing that pizza. It's really taken tavern style to a whole new level. I also did really like this other place that was in the West Loop, but unfortunately, it closed recently. And you never know with these; they might resurface. But it was a business called Paper Thin Pizza, and again, it was all in the name there. It was so extraordinarily thin. I like to joke with my wife, it's like Bible paper, vellum or whatever.
Right.
Yeah. And then, of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention you've got the classics too, right? If you go up and down Archer Avenue on the south side, Obie's is one of the first ones that you hit up right away. Vito and Nick's, I'm sure we talked about it last time.
Yes.
If you fly into Chicago and you land at Midway, it is your duty to go right to Vito and Nick's. It's not far. Bring cash. They don't accept credit cards. They celebrated their 100th year in business in 2020 during the pandemic. And Rose George still owns the place, still goes there several days a week. I'm going to see her next week, and we are starting out meeting at Vito and Nick's for that one. So I'm really excited. It's been years, and I've brought little one-offs here and there, but it's going to be a tour that starts there. So I'm super excited. If you happen to fly into O'Hare, I'm going to send you to Pizza Boy. That's going to be your duty as well. And Carlo Bertoli, he was my local pizza guy in the town that I live in Oak Park. And he broke off during the pandemic and started his own. It was called Pizza Boy because everybody had always known him his whole life growing up in the pizzeria. They're like, it's the Pizza Boy, He does several styles there. He does Detroit style. He does a New York style. He does the tavern style is what I know him for. And that is my go-to day in and day out. But again, you land at O'Hare, your first order of business, go over to Edison Park, not far from O'Hare, and see my guy, Carlo.
Perfect. I love this idea of curing the pizza dough so that you get the crispiness throughout the pizza. Like you said, in typical tavern style pizza, when you get to the middle, you've got very soft dough and, fold it and then pop it in your mouth. But And it's great. It's great. But always me and my brothers, when we would go out for pizza as kids, the ones we would fight over would be the ones on the edge, the crispy ones. And it sounds like with this curing process, you get a whole pizza of crispy ones.
Yes, absolutely. So I'm a little torn on it too because I did like the foldable ones on the inside too. So you just got to get them all. So but you're absolutely right. The first slices that you're going to fight over are those outer edges that are, and especially those little, because when a circular pizza is cut into squares, there are those odd shaped pieces on the end, right? And those are the crispiest of them all.
The
so
little
those
triangles.
Yeah, those four little triangles go first, and then from there you work your way in. So if you think about like just a thin crust pizza and you cut it like a New York style pizza and you picked it up, the end where your fingers would be much crispier, and as you get to the tip, it would sag. And that is what you would have in a normal if you cut it that way. But when you cut them into those squares, you have just pieces that would be towards the middle there that are those soft foldable pieces. So yeah.
John, I wanted to talk to you about your new tour in Bucktown, and is a neighborhood in Chicago. I would say most people probably outside of Chicago aren't familiar with it. So let's start first by getting like a lay of the land.
Yeah, it's a great neighborhood. My sort of background is that after college, when I moved out of my parents' house, I spent a little bit of time on the north side of Chicago near Wrigley Field, and then immediately after that, we moved down to Bucktown, right around the corner of North and Ashland. Was where we settled. And I spent a significant amount of my forming years here in Chicago, my early 20s to mid 20s, living in Bucktown, and got to know that neighborhood. And it was up and coming at the time when I moved there. So these years were 2001 to 2006 or so. But yeah, it is definitely arrived. So just to give your viewer or your listeners an overall abstract of what Bucktown is, it is a safe and easily accessible neighborhood via the Blue Line. And the main stop for that Blue Line is at Damon, North Avenue, and Milwaukee. And we refer to that intersection as the Six Corners because Chicago was built in this grid system where streets run east-west and they run north-south, and they all have a corresponding numbers. So when you are at this intersection, you are at these numbers, and that's how you go. But we do have some angled streets as well that intersect in certain areas. And Elston and Milwaukee Avenue in particular for Bucktown intersects right there at Damon and North. So you've got these two major streets, intersecting each other with an angled street going through it. So now that gives you those six corners. And that is probably like the heart of Bucktown right there, the main part of Bucktown. And it's just a great neighborhood to visit. You could take a trip to Chicago and spend the entire 4 days in Bucktown and feel like that was a great vacation and not have to go down into the Loop and see the Bean at Millennium Park, or not have to go to Streeterville and visit Navy Pier. You would really be immersing yourself in what it's like to be a local in Chicago in a great neighborhood, which still has very close proximity to the downtown area. But they've got hotels there. I know the Hotel Roby is right there. One of the great things when people are visiting, and I always encourage them to, especially if the weather's nice, is to check out the 606. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with what the 606 is.
No.
But it's like this long bike path, runner's path, walking path that is elevated above the city and runs through Humboldt Park all the way to Lincoln Park. And you have great access to it in Bucktown. There have been times where, I'm there with my family, and say we just ended up in this neighborhood 1 to 2 hours ahead of schedule for what we were doing, maybe dinner reservations or something like that. And we've just gone and walked it. And it's a very safe area, and you get to see all different types of real estate and roof decks and businesses and everything. And the reason it's called the 606 is that all of the zip codes inside Chicago start with a 606. So Bucktown is 60622, right over there where it is. So all of the zip codes in Chicagoland start with a 606. So they called it the 606. And it's just it's a great place for families, a great place for young adults. It really checks all the boxes. You've got unbelievable food available to you in Bucktown. When it comes to pizza, I'm just going to mention them really quickly. Peace Pizza and Brewery, 2001 here in Chicago, and they forever changed what pizza is in Chicago because they were the first to bring in a New Haven style, something different than our tavern style and deep dish, and made it possible, kind of showed other people that other styles can exist here in Chicago and in the neighborhoods. Club Lucky, which is part of our Prohibition tour, incredible Italian food, restored to a 1930s, 1940s time era. So very, Art Deco Prohibition vibes, great Italian food, great mixology and cocktails, very strong cocktails. Take it easy if you're going there. And then you have everything from, upscale Mexican food and Filipino food to Mexican street food. I remember, when I first moved there, like a late night spot was La Pasadita, on Ashland Avenue there. And you head over there at 2 a.m. after being out and get some tacos. And it was the perfect ending to a night. And then one day, I think, my buddy and I we had the day off or something like that. It was like a Tuesday afternoon. And he's like, "You want to go to La Pasadita?" And I'm like, "Well, it's noon. Why would we go there now? We haven't been out all night." And we ended up doing it, and surprised the food was just as good. Completely Tuesday afternoon, not having been out all night. So it was good to know that our late night eats were still really, really good. The Violet Hour and sort of this callback to the romanticized era of Prohibition and Bordel, which does burlesque shows and everything. There's a place, I think it's called like Wazwan or something. I might be pronouncing that wrong, but it's like that's been there for a little while, which is like a New Orleans Creole type cooking. You can basically find every type of food, in Bucktown. And done really well. And if it's not done really well, it's not going to be there much longer. I would definitely say that. At that Six Corner area that we talk about, there's Peace Pizza, like we just mentioned, not too far from there. There's a Pauly G's Wicker Park, which is owned by Derek Tung. Pauly G's out of New York. Derek Tung runs both Pauly G's Logan Square and Pauly G's Wicker Park with some business partners. And they took over the old Banshee spot. And they're slinging slices there that are great. We're going to be going there on the tour when the weather gets a little bit warmer here. And next door to that is a Stan's Donuts, which is Rich Labriola from Labriola, responsible for Stan's Donuts. And unfortunately, Stan, the originator in Westwood, California, just passed away last month at the age of 84, I think, or so. But he started a legendary donut shop in Westwood, California, and Rich Labriola loved it so much that he just bugged him until he let him go ahead and license it and bring it to Chicago in 2014, and it just blew up. It's a huge thing. There's like 20 locations in Chicago.
Wow.
And they're on the grocery store shelves, and there's freestanding stands inside of grocery stores too. The food courts in the malls. It's the driver of what for Rich Labriola's business. He calls it the Doughboy Restaurant Group, which is his 2 Labriolas, his 2 Labaras, which are fine dining Italian, and then the 20 plus locations of stands. So it's a donuts were a big hit during the pandemic, and you could always go in and get a donut real quick, or bring the mobile donut truck to outdoor events and stuff like that. So, donuts are good business. The other part of it too is, we always think of, especially me not being a huge dessert guy, but we always think of, the food first and all that. And one of the things I said too was, it's such a family friendly neighborhood too. The ice cream shops in the summer too, that you can, walk to with your kids and stuff. Jenny's Ice Cream, blowing up here in Chicago. She's got several locations at this point. Really, really good artisan ice cream. There's Vaca's Creamery not too far away as well. And I'm trying to think, it's called like Eli's Ark or something like that, right next, like really close to Peace. And like they've got that rolled ice cream, and then they,
Oh,
kind
yeah.
of dress it up so that your ice cream looks like a panda bear or something like
Yeah,
that
right. Or a
on your ice cream
flower,
cone.
things like that. Yeah.
Exactly. The kids love that. And I know that this isn't technically in Bucktown, but fairly close. I mean, if you're all the way there, it's just another few blocks outside. You got Margie's Candies, which is a Chicago staple. Been there. It looks older than looks like it would go back to the 1920s. It's an old soda shop. Very little room inside. Lots of people standing outside waiting. But they've got little desserts and chocolates and turtle sundaes, and it's a really nostalgic, but also extremely. There's a lot of places that can be nostalgic that might not necessarily taste great. This one checks both boxes. It's nostalgic and a good find. And that's, I guess, it's another testament to the neighborhood of Bucktown, is that the surrounding neighborhoods like Logan Square, Humboldt Park, and Ukrainian Village also have these little gems too, and they're very accessible from Bucktown. It's just another stop on the Blue Line or something like that. Spinning Jays was one that my wife and I love. It's an old timey soda shop next to the California Clipper, and you can go there and get a slice of pie and what do they call those? The egg creams or so, where it's like the seltzer water
yeah,
and the
yeah, yeah.
syrup and everything. Bucktown is definitely worth if people visiting Chicago. Take a couple of days and really explore that neighborhood. And it's easy to explore. You just walk up and down North Avenue, walk up and down Milwaukee, walk up and down Damon, and now Division Street, which is 4 blocks south of North Avenue. That is probably the next. That is the next phase in the Bucktown neighborhood, because when I was living there, 20 years ago, that's kind of where those streets I just talked about, that's where we kind of stuck. Division was being built up a little bit more, and now you've got nice elevated brunch spots and boutiques for clothing, and they even have an Adidas store on Milwaukee Avenue, not far from there, that is like hyper local to Chicago, where they've got like Adidas water bottles with deep dish pizza logos on them and stuff. So, the Chicago flag, Adidas apparel. So they've done a good job of endearing themselves to the neighborhood there. And it feels like a local store, even though it's this gigantic global brand, But yeah, you can pretty much find everything you need in a good trip in Bucktown.
They must have great pizza too. Otherwise, you wouldn't be doing a Chicago pizza tour in that neighborhood. How are the tours going so far? Because you've just launched this thing. How's it being received?
Home base for that one, Peace Pizza and Brewery. With Bill Jacobs that owns Peace, phenomenal guy, great pizza. He's doing New Haven justice by brewing beer and cooking pizza the way it's always been done in New Haven. I love the plain pizza to kind of educate people about it. But then I also go with a couple of other specialties that he's got there, depending on, he works with a lot of high-end chefs to do programs for Pilot Light. And, there's some really cool creations that we get into as well. We're fried chicken, honey butter fried chicken on a pizza and stuff like that. So yeah, Peace, phenomenal. We've worked with them ever since we've been around. I did mention that Derek Tong's place, Paulie G's Wicker Park, has taken over the Banshee spot, and they always do a phenomenal New York slice, and it's a great slice of pizza. I love it. The Big Bad Wolf has bacon jam on it, which is, if you cook the bacon and you chop it up really, really, really small, and then cook down some onions with it and turn it into this jelly paste on a pizza. That hits a lot of taste buds when you have one of those slices.
Right.
So, here you are, you're on a Chicago pizza tour. You've now had a New Haven slice, a New York slice. You're like, I thought I was taking a Chicago pizza tour in Bucktown. And that's kind of what, Bucktown is. It's where we have other styles, residing. But of course, I'm going to walk you up Damon Avenue a little bit north, and eventually we're going to land in a place called My Pie, which, classic Chicago deep dish, not a big name for it, but it's been around for decades and decades, and they do it well. And expanded their outdoor seating because, I mean, when we talk about this place, it's truly a pizza shop, right? Like you walked in, got your slice, and got out of there. But now they have a little bit of covered outdoor seating, which is going to bode really well for them. So excited to get that off and running. It's going to be our least expensive tour, our quickest tour, in the fact that it's only going to be about 2 hours or so, where most of our tours are 3 to 3.5. And, wide range of pizza right there. And they're all very good. So super, super excited to that was a pandemic pause and now we're bringing it back. So I'm excited for it.
And I love the variety of tours that you guys offer, and they're budget friendly too. I mean, I see some food tours that are well over $150 a pop, even here in Europe, in so-called inexpensive Portugal. There are expensive food tours here. You can bring the whole family, or you can do a group tour with you guys. So hats off to you for bringing back Bucktown, because I love the fact that you wave the flag for these different areas and get away from the Loop and from Navy Pier and from Grant Park and these places. Everyone's going to go there anyway. But Chicago is a huge city, man. You gotta get into the neighborhoods, and you guys do a great job with that. I did want to talk a little bit about just Chicago in general, because as I mentioned at the top, it's been 4 years since we've talked. You are dialed in to what's going on in the food scene in Chicago. So anything in the last 4 years that's new and exciting, if someone's coming back to Chicago, they haven't been in a while, what would you suggest that they go see and do?
Yeah, I mean, just overall taking a step back and looking at Chicago, I mean, the pandemic has definitely provided a sort of a reset, if you will. We've been running these tours for so long and so laser focused on pizza, and I must say it is still, I feel less qualified to talk about other things, but we're really seeing with the success of the show, The Bear on FX and Hulu,
right?
People are that are coming on these tours are asking me all about the Italian beef, and I'm not going to be starting any sort of Italian beef tour anytime soon. But luckily on our downtown pizza walk, we end up finishing not far from where that was the establishing shots were set up and what it's based off of, which is Mr. Beef in River North. As far as high-end restaurants, I mean, they keep changing. It is just a city that keeps evolving and changing. One of the best meals I think I had last year was at a place called Ima, which is in River North, and it is a Mediterranean style food with a lot of tapas, and usually not my jam when it comes to going up. I value food, and I want to order a meal and have it put in front of me and not share it with anybody. But that one really, it really hit the mark. It was one of those where it's like, you've now ruined hummus for me. I will never eat hummus from a grocery store ever again.
Oh, wow.
And there's Clark Street in River North is pretty good as far as they've worked with the mayor to kind of in the summertime block off the street there, and you've got these high end like Rick Bayless's restaurants, Joko and Topolobambo and Frontera Grill across from a Cuban restaurant, which I absolutely love. And there's just it's a lot of high end restaurants in that area, all while the West Loop really sort of took over for what truly is fine dining in Chicago. So River North used to be the fine dining capital. I would say West Loop is now, but there's still amazing dining in River North. The West Loop's got, place after place. And again, like I said, it keeps changing. Stephanie Izard's got at least 3 restaurants there now. And everything from, it started with Girl and the Goat, and then it made its way to Little Goat, and then the Goat Diner also. I do want to give a mention to Au Cheval, and everybody in Chicago calls it Au Cheval because they don't speak French, but it is Au Cheval because that means with egg. The hamburger place, you're gonna wait forever. They're gonna tell you there's not a table available when you can see very clearly see that there are tables all over the place. But you will stand outside, and at least now they can text message you. We used to have to like stand awkwardly, try to not be in someone's way. But it really is one of the best bites of food that I've had in a long time. But I would say to anybody visiting Chicago, if you want to just an easy cheat would be to pick the West Loop or the Fulton Market, which is really in the West Loop there, and just pick a handful of places to check out, whether it's, the Publican, Beatrix, any of Stephanie's restaurants, and, it's one after another. And like, it's hard to describe it. Like it really is restaurant row. There's nothing else to do there but eat and drink. So, can't go wrong. And, you're not far from Greektown, as you know too. So, if you go out and you get a nice meal there and then you stay out having too many drinks, you can always cap it off with a euro on your way back to your hotel in Greektown.
Let me take you back to the bear for just a minute because, for me personally, I want to get your take on this, but for me personally, I watched that show and was absolutely blown away at its depiction of Chicago. I thought, my opinion, that it nailed what Chicago is like no other show that I've ever seen. Because I think in a lot of ways, Chicago is a little like New York and Boston in that you have this stereotype. And, it comes from, the Bears and all that stuff. And there's certainly a Chicago accent. But there's such a wide variety of people. When you get into that kitchen in the Bear and you see all of these different people talking in different ways, and none of them are going dicka, it kind of blew my mind. I mean, I was thrilled that they had this depiction of Chicago that for me hit so true.
Almost too realistic, quite frankly. And to put things into perspective, I don't watch a lot of TV. I've watched both seasons of The Bear, loved it. It was billed as a comedy. There's nothing funny about it. It is a straight up drama. You're on the edge of just anxiety that is brought up from it because it's so realistic. And I can see, I'm sure some parts are exaggerated a little bit, but you can see when restaurants are struggling, what that culture is like and how they're trying to survive. And I thought that they did a great job of painting Chicago in a realistic way. Maybe one too many shots of the L in the B-roll, but yeah, for the most part, the way that they go about running that business there and the problems that they run into and all the little situations that they go down in the family drama, boy, that really hit the mark on that one. Conversely, people that come and take the tour are always talking about, not always, but a lot of them, watch shows like Chicago Fire, Chicago Med, Chicago PD. The guys and I joke that soon NBC is going to come out with a Chicago accounting, show to kind of round that out. But, they ask me what I think of the show. Oh, isn't it great? And all that. And I'm like, I can't even watch 5 minutes of any of those shows.
Right.
I turn it on and I'm like, nope, wrong. And just turn it off immediately.
Right.
But with the Bear, completely different way on that one. They nailed it. You can tell that was written from someone that has lived it and knows exactly what it's truly like to be a Chicagoan and not coming from an outsider and actors. And I realize that the actors aren't all from Chicago or anything, but like they understood what it meant to be in those roles.
I looked it up. I looked up the actors and I was like, wait, these people aren't from Chicago? Because it just, like I said, it just rang so right? True. It was great.
Especially the cousin.
Oh my God, I know.
Yeah. How many of those guys do you know?
Yeah. So perfect.
Yeah. So, and I love that they went out of their way to incorporate some pizza into it as well, and not sort of over the top versions of it. They did for the fine dining restaurant. They they overheard somebody say they never got deep dish while they were in town in Chicago.
Oh,
and then
right.
they quickly brought Pequods to them and then sort of redid it. Let me tell you the reality of that, though. You call Pequods on a Saturday night and say you're from some fine dining place and you need a deep dish pizza to bring down here and reconstruct. You're going to be on hold for 25 minutes, first of all, and then that pizza ain't going to be ready for another hour and a half. So, love the thought process of that. But and then Pequods, they just got like, the Yelp created this thing where it was the number one pizza in the nation, and I was in there couple Fridays ago because I was going on a show on WGN and bringing a bunch of pizzas for one of the hosts' birthday, and they really wanted me to bring in a Pequod. So I reached out to the general manager there and texted him and said, "Hey, I need a pizza, I need a pan, I'm coming in, and all that." And he's like, "Okay," and you could just tell he was so busy. And I got there on a Friday at like 1:20. I'm going on the show at 3 p.m. I need that pizza now. And he's like, "Sorry, John, we're really backed up. It's going to be another half hour." And I'm like, "Oh, well, they'll probably, they'll just move the TV show back another half hour. That's fine." But I mean, that's just they were packed. A group came in right after me and they're like, table for 6 or whatever. And he looks at them. It's 1:30 in the afternoon on a Friday. And he goes, "It's going to be about 45, 50-minute wait, which is pretty good." And he had to explain to them that that's a pretty good wait. And they're like, "What?" They thought they were just walking in to eat.
Yeah,
so,
right.
No, not so much.
Well, Jonathan Porter from Chicago Pizza Tours, it's been great catching up with you. Let's not do another 4 years before we have you back on the show. This has been a great conversation. Thanks for being on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It is great catching up with you. And I got to say, you helped get me through my Italy trip last year, too. I downloaded the podcast that you did with Katie Parla and learned all about Rome before I landed. So you're doing great work. And I appreciate you sharing it with me and letting me be a small part of it.
Oh, that's awesome. That's great to hear. I love Katie Parla, one of my favorite human beings. I'm glad that you enjoyed that and found it useful.
Thanks. Good to talk to you.
That's Jonathan Porter, pizza ambassador for Chicago. You can find out more at chicagopizzatours.com. I've also got a link in the description below, along with links to all those fantastic recommendations that John gave. Well, that's it for this week. Next week, we're in Ukraine with friend of the show, Rob Rose. Rob spent last summer in the Ukraine, and as you can imagine, it's quite the story. You won't want to miss that. Until then, there's a bunch of new stuff at destinationeatdrink.com. I just posted a story about Portugal's most famous soup. You can read that at destinationeatdrink.com/blog. There's also a new video. It's about the best tapas joints in the gorgeous city of Cadiz, Spain. See that by clicking on the video tab at destinationeatdrink.com or by going to my YouTube channel at Destination Eat Drink 946. Destination Eat Drink is distributed by the Radio Misfits Podcast Network and Ed Silla. Thanks, Ed. I'm Brent Peterson. I'll see you down the road.
Join us next week for another culinary adventure on Destination Eat Drink, a presentation of the Radio Misfits Podcast Network.